Again, I'll take it back that my name is Vicky Wambura, and I will be your host this morning or this afternoon for the different time zones that we're in. And I am from Kenya. I'm a social entrepreneur and the founder of Nafisika Trust that works to reduce the rate of recidivism in Kenya's prisons. We focus on rehabilitation by equipping those who are in prison with economic empowerment and skills building for better reintegration and job employment. I am also a member of IMAB and currently serve as the co-chair. I'm joined with my co-host, Paulo, who I'll let introduce himself at this point.
Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have you today. My name is Paulo Mpokwa. I'm a social entrepreneur from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I've co-founded a company called Fundi Up, which is a handyman on demand service that connects vetted and background checked informal artisans to better work opportunities that they would otherwise not be able to access. But I'm also a member of the Impact Makers Advisory Board, and I'll be your co-host for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulo. So as we kick off today, you've all received the invite and we've talked about IMAB, we've talked about early stage entrepreneurs and the challenges that is being faced, especially in the funding sector. So we just want to give a brief summary of why we are here today. But before we kick off on that, I'd like us to just be on the same page about different definitions. And we've got DOT, which you may have seen in all our event communication, which is Digital Opportunity Trust. And DOT has a vision of all underserved and disadvantaged young women and men realizing their potential in an inclusive digital economy. DOT is committed to digital inclusion for women's empowerment and the potential of young people as leaders of change. Digital Opportunity Trust and its networks of thousands of young leaders has reached over 3 million people globally. DOT commits to deliver digital literacy and 21st century skills in marginalized communities and schools of Africa and the Middle East to reach an additional 1 million people by 2025. That's incredible achievement that they have so far and what they are pursuing to do. Welcome for those who are coming to join us right now. You're very welcome and we're excited to have you here. I'll remind us to have our microphones on mute. Thank you. And I'll explain a bit about my IMAB. Who is my IMAB, or what is IMAB? It is Impact Makers Advisory Board, which is made up of philanthropists, impact investors, and young social entrepreneurs whose goal is to convince stakeholders to support and uplift enterprises in Africa to incubate quickly towards impact and scale. And this is what we are also doing today. And IMAB came about through a co-design process, which took place over 3 sessions in 3 months in the year 2021. And through that, we designed the purpose and the vision of IMAB. During this process, IMAB came up with a report that highlighted some of the challenges that early stage entrepreneurs face. And I being one of the IMAB members, and as an entrepreneur, we journaled our lived experiences. We gathered some of this information from other young entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs. And some of the key challenges that came up was that there was a lack of trust and transparency between funders and fundees. There was also a limited amount of peer support that went towards early stage entrepreneurs. They didn't have the kind of networks that they needed. We also found that funders often funded the familiar. So a lot of early stage entrepreneurs felt that funders didn't want to fund those who seemed to be, risky. And so it meant that many young people were missing out or often being overlooked. And obviously, again, such early stage entrepreneurs repeatedly say that they are finding it hard to access funding and resources. And so we felt that there was such a gap within this ecosystem and what could we do about it. And so we opted to start off by having a conversation and bringing both teams onto the table, and which is today. So we are really grateful and honored that you responded to our invitation to come in to have this conversation, that we may bridge the gap that is between funders and the entrepreneurs, when the entrepreneurs felt that their voices are not being heard. And we thought, then it would be great to have a platform where both parties may be able to listen to one another. And that's why we are here today. So again, we want to say thank you. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Thank you for coming and being willing to have this conversation. And sometimes it may be hard or uncomfortable, but we are hoping that we'll have a meaningful conversation that can help us to bridge the gap. In today's event, it will be divided into two parts. We have the first part, which is a breakout rooms, where social entrepreneurs will lead the conversation. The social entrepreneurs will talk about their work and the challenges that they go through. But then they will also, and the funders and the rest of us will listen to them. And we'll have the second part where we'll have the funder panel session, where we'll have funders who are represented from the various organizations. We'll get a chance to listen to them and what it is that they do and how they support social entrepreneurs. So just before we break out into our breakout rooms, I'll take it over to Paulo to share a bit about the breakout rooms. Paulo.
Thank you so much, Vicky, for such a brilliant opening. As she introduced, next up is the breakout rooms, where we are going to hold meaningful discussions on the success stories and challenges faced by young social entrepreneurs who are raising funding here in Africa. We want to hear from them. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear what they've gone through when raising funding here in Africa. So we will have 4 breakout rooms focusing on 4 thematic areas, which are tech, agriculture and climate, gender and health, and marginalized and displaced communities. And in each room, we will have a combination of an IMAB member and that of young social entrepreneurs who are also youth leading these conversations. And when you registered for the event, you selected a breakout room of your preference, and that is where we are going to send you for the next 30 minutes. There'll be a pop-up on your screen. Click on the button to join a breakout room and make sure you contribute, you listen, and you also have fun. Thank you so much.
For coming back.
So much to say, too little time.
I can imagine. And we would love to hear a summary of everything that has happened in different rooms. So Fola, you want to help us to get a summary from the other groups?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's been a very meaningful discussion, a passionate one as well. So we were in the tech group, but we had 3 other groups in agriculture and climate, marginalized and displaced communities, and also gender and health. So for each one of these groups, we'd love to get just a very brief summary of how the discussion went, some of the key points, what are the most touching experiences, from different social entrepreneurs. And I think I can start with our group, the tech group. So first of all, we pinpointed that challenges that most of us go through from different countries are quite similar, and that was picked from how we were sharing, for instance, things such as how long it takes to receive funding, from the point of application to when money is actually in the bank. It takes 2 years, 3 years sometimes. It's very frustrating. So that cuts across the board for people from different countries. But we also a question was posed by Mercy from Kenya, that how do we encourage equity funding, because it is still tough for local founders and local entrepreneurs to raise funding, especially when that is compared with other entrepreneurs, expatriate entrepreneurs, or people from the US or the UK or the Europe who come to co-found and found companies here in East Africa or in Africa in general. So there's too much a gap in terms of the money and the funding that goes towards such individuals, and which goes towards local founders. So it was a shared perception that the goalpost keeps on shifting, all the time, because some other people would come to a country like Kenya and say like, oh, we're building, we have an idea to build a company that would inspire food culture, and then they would get funded $1 million, just for that idea. But there are other companies, local companies and local founders who are building already, have some level of traction, and they need something to scale, but they're not being given enough attention or funding or anything for that matter. So, and they would say like, oh, we think this market is too tough, or I don't know, you need to, show me more traction. So the goalpost keeps on shifting, according to who's being funded. Yes, and also we heard from Salma that it is hard to be understood by potential investors. We feel that, and she feels that most of them do not really take time to understand how much impact these entrepreneurs are making towards their communities, how much they touch their communities. She thinks that, and we also share this sentiment that there's lack of enough information at times, and also tight policies by governments. Unfortunately, time was too limited. We couldn't hear from Gerard. Maybe Gerard, you have a thing or two to share in terms of challenges, just briefly. Hello, Gerard, can you hear me? Okay.
No worries, we can always come back to him.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So maybe we can go to another group, another breakout room. Sorry, agriculture and climate. Would love to hear from you and hear how the discussion went and what we can learn from it.
Okay, agriculture and climate. The topic was how do we build a funding ecosystem, and we had some points from the members. So one is, we congratulate you for bringing us together like this, because this is how it starts. By bringing us together like this, we're able to see what others are doing here, what others are doing, and learn from them. And this is by itself is a great way. And then out of that, you can move on and train us. We come to this with different capabilities. So you can identify areas that we need some training or some advancement, and you can help us in that area. There are those who are ahead, there are those who are just starting, there are those who have started, and they are somewhere. So we are in different stage growths. So you can identify different ways of training different groups. And the third thing is, at some point, you may need to refer us to other people, knowing that funders fund what they trust. And since if you can refer us and say, we met these people, we've checked what they're doing, we've trained them in ABCD, we think you can help them in ABCD, it will be better than just the other person going themselves and looking for those funds. Then another point was more friendly funding ways, whereby the example was, we all see these competitions and prizes out there. Let me use the Nobel Prize, that is millions and millions, but it's only going to one person. So the idea was, if that fund would be spread across so many people. So like in a situation where you find there is a prize, there are 50 plus applications and only 3 get. So maybe there could be a more friendly way that at least more can get, not just the 3. Then another point was on technology. How do we adopt technology to achieve this? So introduce technology in all this so that we can build funding ecosystems that are smart using technology. And one member also talked about climate change, and they were saying that climate change is affecting all of us, and how do we tie the funding into those who are really doing something towards that climate change. We had building of trust, help us build trust. A member said, and it is true, that funders only fund what they trust or what they feel like they trust. So how do you help us build that trust between us and the funders? Then the second last was fair judging criteria, particularly startups. You know, there are people who have been in the game for 5 years. There's someone who just started last month. There's someone who started 5 months ago. And when you tell them, we want you to show us impact, the 5 years guy will show a real impact, or the 3 years person will show impact. Or we want your audited accounts. When a member said, maybe you don't have even that money to be audited in the first place. So you don't have those audited accounts, and because you don't even have that money to be audited. So it is not fair. Someone who has been in the game for some time, they have made some money or they have the money, it can be audited. But someone who is just starting, and some entrepreneurs are just a calling and they start the dream, they start the dream. So it should be fair that those requirements are checked. And then the last one, which is very, very interesting, is feedback from funders. And members said that they have sent like so many applications, but 90.9% is sorry. We are sorry, ABCD. We are sorry, ABCD. We are sorry, ABCD. And when he checked the ABCD, he can't see the why they are sorry, because there's no feedback. It's not like we are sorry because you are this and this, or we are sorry because you don't meet this and this, or we are sorry because you can't get you. Like, they need to say we are sorry because, and the sorry should help the young entrepreneur really work on that thing, and then tomorrow when they apply, they get it right. So those are those.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bernard. We appreciate the comprehensive feedback from the group. For the next one, I think we will have gender and health, just briefly, in a minute or two.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Paulo. So in the gender and health criteria, we talked about, the first issue we talked about was inflexible funding criteria. We feel like there's a limit when it comes to the eligibility of girl-led and youth-led organizations to receive grants and funding, because we feel like most of the time, donors are very specific about the length to which organizations should have been registered, the several years of experiences, audited financial records. Sometimes they even request for an adult to receive the funding. This usually really puts behind organizations that are youth-led, that are girl-led, or startups in general. Another issue that we talked about was restricted funding. Sometimes funders are not open to learning from feedback and shifting to the operations and meet the needs in the ground. So sometimes that can be very challenging, because what you included in the budget, there could be a shift that is happening in the community. For example, COVID-19, and Jerusalem put this really clearly in Ethiopia, where sometimes there's situations that happen that they need you to make some changes, but then not all the donors are flexible enough to accept that. Another issue was limited funds. Some donors specifically mentioned that they're not willing to cover staff remuneration or office admin costs. Therefore, this reduces the organization's capability to have a sustainable impact, because sometimes you have to let go of very talented staff. So what we need what we talked about more, what we need is more access to funding, of course, and then capacity building if necessary to enable the organizations to handle funding better. If you truly feel like an organization does not have the capacity, then be the one to check the risk and provide them with that capacity, because when the management and the sustainability of social entrepreneurs is improved, then it will strengthen the institutional capacity and enable them to increase their impact and reach in their communities. Thank you, Paulo.
Well, thank you so much, Nima. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we'll hear from the marginalized and displaced communities group.
Hi, Paulo. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So for the marginalized and displaced group, we actually looked at what we knew before starting our social enterprises. And I think one thing that we realized was social entrepreneurs drawing the distinction between passion and if they are in for business. So we realized that in social entrepreneurship, you have to look at three things. That is the people, the profit, and the planet. The planet is what you are doing that is solving an issue in the environment, and the profit, if you're going to get money out of it, and the people is who you are working for. And we also touched on the fact that some of us came in because we have passion of running social enterprises without really having a pre-knowledge about what to do at this point, the first step to take, and what is the next. We didn't even know that you'd have to go on social media to let people know what you are doing and keep financial records, have a document that outlines the plan, your vision, your mission, your goals, and what you seek to achieve, etc. We also mentioned that there is a need that social entrepreneurs collaborate with each other in order for us to achieve our goals. Without wasting much time, I would say these are the things that we shared in our group. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Powerful, powerful text from everybody. Vicky, over to you.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, everybody. I feel like if we were in a physical room, I really wanted to clap because I resonate with so many of the points that have been put across. And I hope the rest of us do. Incredible summaries. Thank you to everybody and for the conversations that have been had in your groups. So as we just come to a close of that powerful session, we are now going into the second part of the event. And in this part now, we get to listen to our funders who will be sitting in a panel, and they will just share with us a bit more and hopefully also respond to some of the things that they have had in the breakout rooms. So we will begin by just introducing each of them, and I would like to request that as I call out your name, if you could say in one sentence about your organization, about the work that you are doing, and then we will jump into the questions. And also if you could just maybe mention for the sake of everybody in the room to know what kind of funder are you? Are you a grants, funder? Are you an, investment, impact investment, or a mentor, a connector? Just to describe so we may know what kind of funder you are and how the entrepreneurs in the room could be able to reach you. So we will kick it off with Mr. Evans Okinyi of East African Philanthropy Network. One sentence about your work and the kind of funder that you are.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Can I confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Evans Okinyi. I am the CEO of the East Africa Philanthropy Network. We are not a funder per se, but we strengthen the philanthropy ecosystem. And if I narrow that down to the conversations that we're having today, we look at how do we ensure that, for example, the social entrepreneurs connect with the funders and the other opportunities which are available in strengthening the ecosystem that they operate under. And we'll go deeper into that shortly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take it over to Audrey Mate.
Yes, thanks, Vicky. My name is Audrey Mate. I am a program manager at Village Capital. And what we do as Village Capital is we run accelerators and boot camps that teach entrepreneurs how to speak the language of investors. We are a global organization operating in Latin America, US, South Asia, Africa, and Middle East. We had a sister arm that was World Cup Investments that actually funded companies directly. However, we've now completely shifted to working with entrepreneurs and entrepreneur support organizations directly. Yeah, so more to come on that. Yeah, but thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Audrey. And we will go over to Dido Barashamaje. Sorry, Dido, if I have massacred your name.
Well done, Vicky. Greetings from the Segal Family Foundation, and I wanted to also say hi to my fellow panelists, and then really commend the work of DOT around this conversation on bridging the gap between funders and entrepreneurs, which is really, really timely. The Segal Family Foundation exists to really challenge the power dynamics that exist in philanthropy. We do this by partnering early. We partner with social entrepreneurs across the continent when the DNA of their enterprises is still forming. We provide them with unrestricted funding and multi-year from incubation, acceleration to the luminary circle, which is where they graduate. This is close to 10 years of partnership. And we also spend a lot of time bringing around them ecosystems of other funders and other entrepreneurs to build a community of creative collaborators. We currently have over 300 partners across Sub-Saharan Africa, and we have appetite to continue to grow in the next couple of years, and happy to dive into that a little bit later.
Great, thank you so much, Dido. Welcome, and we have Daisy Ford. Welcome, Daisy.
Thank you, glad to be here. I'm Daisy, I'm the Head of Group Investment Programmes at Firstport, which is Scotland's social enterprise development agency, and I run the Catalyst Fund, which is a revenue-based loan fund for early stage social entrepreneurs. So it's a very flexible repayment fund. I'm also the chapter lead for Zebras Unite in Scotland, and Zebras Unite is a global movement of entrepreneurs who are challenging the dominant startup narrative around venture capital and the way that works. Very pleased to be here.
Lovely, thank you so much. And we've got Hebe Foster.
Hi, I'm Hebe Foster. I work at Mercy Core Ventures. We're an early stage impact investor. We usually basically we do equity investments in early stage companies that have usually tech-enabled solutions focusing on climate resilience and financial inclusion. And I think that's all from me for now. I can give you more information if you'd like it.
Thank you so much, Hebe. And last but not least, we've got Madonna Kedona.
Thanks, Vicky. So my name is Madonna. I am the Director of Programs at Women First International Fund. So we're a women's fund that resources early stage women and trans-led organizations working on economic justice, particularly improved livelihoods and increased financial independence for women, girls, and trans people in 5 countries. So we work in Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Uganda, and India. Our program involves grant making and capacity building over a 6-year period, and I look forward to sharing more a bit later. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for honoring the call just to come and be part of this panel and to share more about the work that you are doing. We try to get a diverse kind of panel to join us, and I believe we've all had different kinds of funders that and so the way this will work is I will pose a question to each of our panelists, and they will basically respond. And at the end, as we listen to their responses, we will collect your questions. You could send them over to Tatiana or put them in the chat, and then we will pose these questions at the end. We'll be able to gather them together and hopefully have some time that the panelists will respond to us. So in the same order that we started, I will pose the first question to Mr. Evans of East African Philanthropy Network. And the question is that in the IMAB report, we found one of the key challenges for early stage social entrepreneurs is feelings of isolation. Early stage social entrepreneurs often feel like they are trying to reinvent the wheel. So given the early stage entrepreneurs are part of your network, what is your approach for strengthening peer support and collaboration between entrepreneurs? And and particularly those ones who are trying to access funding. So how do you bridge this gap in your work? Evans?
Thank you so much, Vicky. We bring together, and sorry, allow me start by, first of all, appreciating you and the team for this amazing work, amazing convening that is very timely and important for the growth of the space that we are serving. Also to say a big thank you to my fellow panelists for gracing this occasion. We as a network, we bring together various donors, grant-making organizations from the corporate world, from various aspects of philanthropy. And what we do is that we appreciate as a network that there's a parallel role that social entrepreneurs plays in the social change that we all aspire for. We see you using market-driven strategies to tackle critical social issues in a very innovative way. And being a network, what we do is we look at how do we address the challenges which the various actors within the ecosystem face. So we look at this from both the demand side and the supply side. So what we do is from the demand side, we have, the social entrepreneurs. From the supply side, we have got the donors, the corporate entities who actually support the work that is being done by the entrepreneurs. So what we do in answering the question that you did, we are approaching this from 3 angles, and all of them are geared towards strengthening the capacity of the social entrepreneurs in positioning them to benefit from the opportunities which are there while dealing with the challenges that are there in the work that they are doing. And so the first thing that we do is what we call knowledge creation and management. And we want to see an increased flow of information, an increased flow of opportunities for scaled and sustainable social entrepreneurship ecosystem development. So we look at issues around research, promoting learning within the space. We work very closely with other networks within the continent and outside the continent in pushing this agenda. For example, FVPA is currently developing an opportunity directory for Africa social investors. This is a big opportunity for the partners, for the investees, in terms of the connection that we are talking about. We are looking at catalogs of funders from the private entities, from philanthropy also. And then how do we ensure that there's strong communication and strong relations between the 2 entities that we are talking about, from the demand side and the supply side. Then on the area of knowledge, we look at how do we tell the story of the amazing work that various social entrepreneurs are doing, the amazing works that we had with you in the breakout session, and how do we promote listening to them in terms of the work that they are doing. The second area that we are looking at as a network is supporting our members, the donors, the entities who are supplying capital or the resources that the entrepreneurs are looking for. How do we ensure that we bring platforms that enable them to connect? How do we promote collaboration through connection? We talked in the breakout rooms about, the funding perspective, the unrestricted, the general support funding, the flexibilities that they are talking about. This is only made possible when they have platforms where they can share with each other, they can network with each other, and they can connect with each other. That is the role that we are playing in promoting the work that you are doing as social. So the peer learning support and of course mentorships, because it is from those engagements where they get to connect with those other people that can mentor the work that they are doing. Lastly, Vicky, we look at it in terms of how do we promote partnerships and how do we ensure that we support building of strong institutions. So connecting them with the capital across the entire continuum, building of the capacity of these organizations through the members of the network who have capital, who have resources that promote capacity strengthening. So what we are looking at as a network is how do we ensure that we have an ecosystem that is efficient and supportive of the work of the social entrepreneurs. I think I'll stop there for now. And of course, we'll proceed with the conversation as time goes.
Thank you so much, Evans. And, that was a very, detailed kind of response. And I feel that this would be really great that lots of people in the room would love to follow up with you on how do they get to be part of the network. So maybe you could share with us a website, a link in the chat that people can be able to be part of the network, because it seems very resourceful for the things that we have even discussed today. Thank you so much. We'll head on to Audrey. And Audrey, this has come up in the breakout rooms, and it has come up during the summary that the question is that, there's a feeling that there is this power imbalance of foreign funders, where foreign funders often fund the familia. There was an example that was given by Paulo, which then tends to be that many local entrepreneurs are overlooked, and there's more favoring for initiatives that have been founded by foreigners rather than the locals. So as a US-based funder with an office in Nairobi, how do you avoid or reconcile issues with funding of the familia? How do you ensure you champion local entrepreneurs and local entrepreneurship ecosystems?
Yeah, thanks, Vicky, for that. Yeah, I completely hear you, entrepreneurs. I think it was a very interesting conversation that we had in the breakout session. And I wish I could get an opportunity to just, respond, but I know time is not allowing us. But yeah, I hear you, you're not alone. So something to note also is, I know it sounds very unique to us as entrepreneurs in Africa, working in the Africa ecosystem, but this challenge as Village Capital, we have also seen where our company is actually based out of the US, where minorities are not funded. So the money technically always ended up going to white founders, founders in particular cities like California. So what we are trying to do as Village Capital is we are trying to rectify this power imbalance. So we are trying to have, more African founders getting the capital, women founders getting, the capital as well, and African entrepreneurs getting these funds. But I also believe that the fact that we are talking about this means that we are aware and we are making steps in the right direction. So it may be a painfully slow process, but we are where US was a few years ago. They're experiencing the same challenges. So it's also happening on this side of the world. So take heart, take courage. It's a slow process, but we are getting there. But I believe we've made some significant progress in the ecosystem where we are now seeing African funders getting into the space. People like Toby and Melelu, and there's a company called Fast Check Africa, which is now funding female entrepreneurs. So it's African founders are actually getting into this space. So we are seeing a lot of that, and hopefully that will bring a change to the ecosystem. So in regards to Village Capital, as you rightfully said, we are based out of the US. However, we have branches and offices across the world. So like I earlier mentioned, we have Latin America, the US, South Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. So this ensures for us that as an organization, we have teams on the ground who have an understanding of the various ecosystems. And are diligently working to ensure that the money is going to the right hands. So we're also doing this by lobbying and encouraging collaboration among the ecosystem. So for example, like when we do a program, we try our best to put out a report and talk up more about the challenges that entrepreneurs are facing. We also saw that knowledge is a huge factor to causing this bias. So whatever we put out, we try and educate investors as much as possible about the companies that are operating in Africa. Yeah, so for direct entrepreneur programs, one of our program requirements is, a company that is part of our program has to have an African founder, and the founder has to be based on the continent. And if they have lived experience of the problem, so if they have experience, like let's say, for example, if you have an agricultural program running, and the founder was once a farmer, or has parents who are farmers, that's better, because now it also ensures that we are actually funding the right people. Something we've also done as Village Capital, which is unique to us, is we have eliminated pitch days, which, you know how pitch days are. You stand in front of an investor, you pitch, for 1 minute, have a Q&A session. So something that we have done is actually we have done away with that. So to just encourage better, in-depth conversations between funders and entrepreneurs. So that way we believe, instead of just seeing, a company's pitch, for example, or just, seeing people at face value, you can actually take more time with an entrepreneur, get to learn more about them. And, that way we have seen more female founders being funded, and also the minority groups getting funds that way. So we are also working with funders to help articulate their businesses. What we have seen, like even in the case for the Paolo example that he mentioned for the food startup, is founders, you can say foreign founders kind of have a way of articulating their businesses better. So what we do as Village Capital is try empower founders as much as possible to be able to speak about their companies in and out, in a way that an investor can be able to understand it, and also they give out information that an investor is actually looking for. So yeah, that's one of the things. And then there's a lot of learnings that we have done over the years in our programming. So now we are trying to pass this to entrepreneur support organizations so that we are not just working alone. So we are helping them, better prepare founders for investment. And then now by equipping them, we ensure that maybe, in the case of an investor who does not want to invest directly in an entrepreneur, these ESOs, and I think one of the founders mentioned this, these organizations can actually, I receive the investment on behalf of the entrepreneurs and then pass it through to them. So what we are doing is we are trying to empower these organizations so that they can get as much, capacity to be able to get these huge funds. Yeah, so, and then again, one of the other things is we've been in existence since 2009. So what we are doing is we are trying to put all these learnings together. We put out reports every other year that, is trying to educate everyone in the ecosystem. So that's funders, entrepreneurs. We have a few reports out there. You can check our website, billcap.com. So yeah, a lot of readings, learnings that we are sharing, we are putting out there, and that will hopefully help bridge this gap between funders and founders. So yeah, there's a lot I can mention, a lot of responses I can say in regards to what has been shared in the groups, but yeah, let me leave that for now. Yeah, we can speak more.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for that response as well. And one common thread I can see from your response and also from Evans is just the power of storytelling for social entrepreneurs. Is how do you communicate your initiative or the work that you are doing, because that's a strong part or a key part in getting funding. So thank you so much for bringing that. And that is also one of the things that we brought out in the report, is to have a strong aspect of storytelling, and I'm glad that you are bringing that out very strongly. And then we go to Dido. I actually just want to stick in this place, Dido, with you, and just to say, so at this point, it is what it is, right? There's still a bias of funders funding the familiar. At the moment, what should then the entrepreneurs be doing? Should they work harder? Should they work smarter? Should they have a foreigner in their organizations? What should they do? And for Single Family Foundation, how are you supporting that, social entrepreneurs don't fall through the cracks in this, because things are the way they are. But as we try to change that, as we try to pivot, and it's a big ship to turn around, how do they survive? How do they navigate this challenge that they're in?
Vicky, please allow me to first disagree. I don't think entrepreneurs are a problem to be solved. They work in a space that has historical imbalance. And oftentimes we have heard words like decolonizing wealth, decolonizing the space, because if you look historically, there's only 2% of all international funding for aid and for development that goes to proximate leaders. Proximate leaders in this case are the people who work and are solving the problems that they know very well. And secondly, I wanted to say that I don't think it is what it is. We have to call the spade a spade. I think there's a space for playing the game, and then there's a place for changing the game. Unless we really do serious effort in changing the game aspect, it's going to be hard for us to really move the goalpost, as some of the people have said earlier. And I wanted to come back on one thing that Audrey mentioned. I really respect the work of Village Capital, and we have partnered for several times, similar to people like Evans and etc. But one thing that keeps coming to my mind now, I've been working the sector for over the last 10 years. I think it's delicate when we say that Western entrepreneurs articulate the missions and the work better. I think what we have observed through things like pitching and 1-minute elevator pitch, it's a way to simplify really complex and nuanced problems in a very simplified solutions that Western entrepreneurs have done so well. And what we hear often from our partners and from entrepreneurs when we interact, when the money is not an issue, they talk about how the problems that they're solving are historical, that how they are results of other problems. They're not just solving gaps issue like we see with most of the enterprises in the Western world, where they're solving gaps that have emerged from growth. We are talking about entrepreneurs who are solving historical, society, political, and economic problems in ways that are really, really, really hard to articulate in one sentence. So what I would say that we do around that ourselves at the Segal Family Foundation, one is really to listen, to understand, and to really learn about the problems that we're trying to solve. Proximate leaders, proximate entrepreneurs have an understanding very well of the makeup of that problem to understand how to solve it. And for us not to really have a narrow mindset to look for simple solutions, there's no shortcut. Fixing the issue of access to education in the last mile that is of quality, that is accessible, and that is sustainable is really, really hard when most of these are political decisions over the years. Solving how you drive healthcare in the last miles using technology and building the infrastructure is not a simple solution. Really rethinking about food systems and intersection between education and healthcare and agriculture is really, really hard. So we try to spend a lot of time first understanding the problems that we're trying to solve from the perspective of the entrepreneurs themselves. So that's one. Second, I think it's really important for everyone who's supporting entrepreneurs to challenge the notion that funders and investors know best. Because you have the money does not mean that you have the best solutions. And oftentimes that is not the case. And it's one of the things that our foundation is really, really pushing the sector to understand, to really take a sit back and try to learn how best we can deploy capital. The third thing is really challenging certain notions around what is impact and metrics, to really think about it from not from a perspective of attribution, but contribution. Most funders and investors want to see really with a laser focus, what is the impact that is going to be created by their intervention. So because of that, they tend to structure the financial instruments with that in mind, but we know that's not how things work. It's rather a question of tell us how this contribution helps you reach your mission and how it contributes to the work that you're already doing, rather than for entrepreneurs and leaders catering individually for each donors, where we shift the attention not to cater for donors' needs, but mostly to allow them to work very well. So some folks like Evans and Audrey talked about the need for direct, unrestricted and multi-year funding that allows institutions to have roots and to really invest in research and development, to invest in building teams, to invest in having the capacity that they being blamed for not having, because we know that the difference between having a capacity and not having it is how much you can pay for it. And, you know, conducting ourselves with that sort of understanding. So what we do is, on one hand, find visionaries regardless of their registration status. I heard in other group discussions how registration sometimes poses a problem. I would encourage other funders to also look at talent when they find it and figure out the investment frameworks and tools and approaches to sponsor that, because we're looking at creating value. We're not looking at how successful our processes are. The other thing that we really look into is something that folks have been talking about, the need for partnerships and the need for collaboration, the need for a community. I heard one poignant story that one participant shared in our group that, you know, she wished she knew that this journey is lonely. I wish that was not the case. And I wish funders took on that responsibility in curating spaces like this, in curating spaces where entrepreneurs come to find resource, not only money. Money is just a tiny fraction around how these issues are being solved. Mostly around how are you curating a community, how are you building a network, how are you connecting network, and how do you drive all that to really see the percentage of our budgets that goes into that, right? Funders and investors want their partners and grantees and investees to collaborate, but we don't incentivize that. We need to start showing percentage of our budgets that goes particularly into that, so that it's not left to the folks that we invest in. And another thing that I think you asked, Vicky, was around how do we take on some of the burden to allow entrepreneurs to succeed? We see this as beyond money. Once you have provided money, there's something that we call active partnership, is allowing our partners that we call first partners, not grantees, because we see this from an equal footing. They have the expertise, we have the resource. Together we can solve the issues. That's our perspective. So we give them leeway to say, here is our email addresses and our phone numbers. Feel free to reach out if there are problems that we can troubleshoot together. Oftentimes it's just making an introduction. Time to time it's just listening and, you know, allowing folks to the space to vent. And oftentimes is also using our power to usher in other funders and resources their way, right? Rather than leaving it to them. Power speaks to power. It's a responsibility of funders and investors to usher the groups of other investors toward their partners and investees, you know, to really put our money where our mouth is. So we think about all this as intelligent financing. How do you provide not only capital? Yes, capital is sought by a blended financing scheme. And again, let's think about connections and connectivity. And third, let's think about networking and collaboration and really investing in that kind of stuff. So long story short, it's all the things that folks have mentioned here. And then one of the other ways we've seen to push the sector is not only into speaking to ourselves. Everyone on this platform agrees, right? It's like, how do we create a community within the community where funders also have a responsibility of extending that networks of people who share these values of being grantee-centric, of active partnership, of collaboration, and of partnership in concrete ways, right? How do we expand that? So we see it not as a problem of entrepreneurs and our investees and partners, as a responsibility that funders, we have to take on ourselves. One, in deconstructing where we think value is, you know, we not funding individuals or ideas is equivalent to not being able to see a Frank Einstein sitting in a refugee camp in Nairobi, or not being able to see the next big scientific solver in sitting in a township in Malawi, kind of stuff. So Value comes in a variety of forms. It's our responsibility to really get away from our criteria, which oftentimes is a cover to building trust. And one thing that I wanted to say before I finish, most of those criteria are aimed to figure out the trust element. So if there are other ways where entrepreneurs and funders can share ways to reach that, would enrich the conversation and bridge the proximity gap.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Dido. Again, if I was in a room, I want to clap and say thank you so much for those great points. You know, one of the things that for me has just really resonated, as you said, is that entrepreneurs are solving historical issues, and these solutions are complex and they can be multi-layered. And I think just taking time to really understand this and not just slap onto an entrepreneur that, you know, we want you to maybe tackle this problem in this way, but to really understand it can be complex and multi-layered. And that means also that a social entrepreneur may not be able to fully address the problem by themselves. It takes many other entrepreneurs playing in that space to be able to tackle those issues that they are addressing. So thank you so much. Thank you that you've challenged us that we need to shift the game, not just to play the game. And that is what is important. And that's why I brought that question, is what should we do? Because sometimes people are playing the game, but that is not the solution. It's not a long-term solution, but we do need to shift the game. So thank you so much, Dido. Fantastic points that you have shared with us. We're going to move a little bit into a different area, and now we are over to Hebe. And Hebe, the question is concerning trust? So building on the previous questions, the funding sector terminology can be a barrier for early stage. Sorry, did I miss? Sorry, I missed that. It is Daisy. We are going over to Daisy. And another question is about lack of transparency, and early stage entrepreneurs struggle to know how to access funding, particularly entrepreneurs just starting out. Many do not have the personal networks that have been mentioned earlier, or insider knowledge, or how to even begin fundraising, or and the due diligence process. So the question is, how are you addressing transparency with your work, and how are you transparent about decision making? And this is a question that has also come to us from the participants in the room, who have asked, how do you make that decision on who to fund and who not to fund? Thank you, Daisy.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, we try and address transparency throughout the journey. And I think it's important to say that First Port works with social entrepreneurs right from the idea stage. And we're lucky, very lucky to be funded publicly by the Scottish Government to do that. So we provide the support and help them build up the skills so that whatever background somebody is coming from, hopefully they can all achieve that same level of skill before they get to talking about funding or investment, and receive the same support in things like how to manage cash flow, or how to do marketing or market research, all those sort of essential skills. And then when it comes to thinking about investment, the Catalyst Fund is specifically there to fund entrepreneurs who can't receive funding from other organizations. So we recognize that there is a gap, particularly for early stage social entrepreneurs who aren't able to access, for instance, bank funding, or that from larger social investors who are working at more of a growth stage. So they need, some funding, some investment to get going, but that's not there. But we do need to make sure that they have approached other investors first. So we will work with them. I have a colleague, Colin, who's specifically his job to work with entrepreneurs before they apply to the Catalyst Fund and make sure that they know who they can apply to. And we will provide introductions where that's necessary, whether it's to private individuals or to other social investors or to banks, so that they have, understand what their options are, and hopefully those networks aren't closed. But it is certainly a problem where you have individuals coming from different sorts of backgrounds and they don't have, as you say, those networks and that access. And a lot of times the understanding of jargon that's thrown around, particularly in the startup space, that you really need to understand in order to be part of those conversations. So we really try and open up those conversations and remove the jargon or make it much clearer. And then when it comes to applying for the Catalyst Fund, it's often the first time people are applying for repayable finance. And so we are very clear in the way we spell out our questions. We say things like, how do you know customers will buy from you? How will you reach those customers? What is the investment for? These are questions that perhaps a bank would ask you, but they might ask it in more complicated language. So we like to break it down into quite clear questions. And then we also explain to them the decision-making process. We have an investment committee who make the decisions. So it's not myself and my colleagues, it's independent people who make up a panel and will make those decisions. There's been quite a lot of criticism of the social investment sector in the UK, particularly of having too many fancy pants bankers making decisions, not enough social entrepreneurs. So we make sure to have a committee that's made up of different types of people. So we do have one banker, but we also have somebody from a venture capital background. We have social entrepreneurs, and we have people from larger social investors as well. So that we have that range of backgrounds, people looking at it from different perspectives. And I think it's particularly important that we have social entrepreneurs in there who have that grassroots experience of building something and understanding what this journey is like of going from having an idea to trying to raise investment for it. And then once we've been through that process, and I noticed this was something that came out of the breakout rooms around feedback, I will directly report what the investment committee have said, whether it's a yes or a no. I will say, these are the things that they liked about your application. These are the things that they think you need to work on. And so particularly if it is a no, we'll go through those things. And often it's more of a not now. These are the things that you need to do before we think you might become ready. So we do have those who go away, are able to work on the things that they've been told, and come back again and achieve success the next time round. So, and in that process, we're hoping to make it more transparent for them as well when they then go on to try and achieve that bigger growth finance or go to a bank, so that they've been through the process and they understand what they're going to be asked and they understand how to present that information.
Great, thank you so much, Daisy. You've hit on everything that we are all just have been asking, and so thankful for that. The key takeaways for me is just liking the way you share the networks for where else entrepreneurs can get some funding, and also that you have social entrepreneurs sitting on the decision-making board, which is really important, because many times you may find people who, as you said, the fancy pants, who don't really know about the kinds of work that are going on and are making the final decision, and that give helpful feedback. So thank you so much for that. And I would like to just remind the audience that if you've got any questions for the panelists, please put it in the chat or send it to Tatiana, and we will be happy to raise them at the end. As we can see, time is going well spent. But thank you everybody for such great conversation. I hope this is exciting for everyone. We have two more people to go through, and now we've got Hebe from Mercy Corps. And so just building on that previous question, Hebe, the funding sector's terminology can be a barrier for early stage social entrepreneurs, including how funders define early stage. And I believe that for the different funders in the room today, we all have different ways of defining what early stage is, and the requirements you have for them, or the amount of money that is going to an early stage entrepreneur. So the interpretation of early stage leaves many entrepreneurs falling through the gaps of these definitions, being too advanced for some of them, or but not far enough for other kind of funding. So how do you define early stage, and what are the ways that you would that you help social entrepreneurs identify themselves what stage that their venture is at?
Awesome, thanks Vicky. And I just want to say thank you to all the panelists so far. It's been really interesting for me just to hear from your perspective and you sharing your insights, so I appreciate that. I'm going to try and sort of keep this pretty simple and clear, I guess. Obviously, as you pointed out, Vicky, the definition of early stage differs very much from fund to fund, and that applies also to accelerators and incubators and things like that as well. From a Mercy Corps perspective, when we talk about early stage, we're kind of looking at the pre-seed rounds. So that first stage, kind of post family and friends, we will often end up investing in companies at that pre-seed stage, and then we'll reinvest when they go to a seed or a Series A. But the early stage for us is sort of, as I say, that in that initial stage, post family and friends, as it were. To give a bit of context for that, our ticket sizes tend to be between 50 and 500k. That's quite a big range, I'm aware, and mostly our ticket size is like 150 to 250k. Generally, we tend to co-invest those, so our ticket will normally be around 10 to 30% of the round. So in general, I guess that kind of works out. And if you do the maths, as companies that are raising between sort of $500,000 to $2 million, vaguely in that sort of space. In terms of sort of how ventures might identify where they fall on that spectrum, we do all of our due diligence, and we screen sort of 200 deals a quarter. And we usually end up speaking to the founders, and we have kind of quite a well-practiced, I guess, set of questions that help us identify what stage the venture's at, and then we will, if we can't invest because they're too early stage or too late, we'll usually, as Stacey was talking about, pass them on to someone, another investor in our network who's relevant. But I guess just from what I've seen in the last sort of year or so that I've been with the firm, the characteristics that tend to be common to the ventures that we're investing in is that, so first of all, I guess often the teams will be either still just the founders or co-founders, or perhaps maybe one or two other employees when we invest. Usually companies won't have more than a year of traction. In some cases it's as little as a month, but with really good kind of understanding of the market and the customers that they're appealing to. They'll usually have some financial systems and some modeling, but often that's like a sort of more of a snapshot, and it doesn't include too much kind of robust projections or forecasting, which is something that we can support ventures to build once we've invested. So I'm not saying that it's a requirement not to have forecasting, but just more that that's generally what we've seen is a sort of gap that we can fill. And so yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that what we love to see in that early stage venture definition is sort of a great idea, a strong founding team, some traction, or at the very least, as I say, a really good understanding of the market that the company's working in, but also scope for growth and ways that we can support and plug in. We've got a really kind of comprehensive post-investment support offering that spans everything from, as I say, financial projections and forecasting to reporting and accounting, fundraising strategy, impact measurement, customer insights, kind of loads of stuff there. So I hope that helps a little bit to kind of characterize the venture that we're looking at.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Hebe. And I know Mercy Corps is quite active in the countries that we are in, and so that's really great to just hear how you are operating. I do have a follow-up question on this, but I think I'm going to leave it to the end so that we can hear from everyone and then just bring it up. So we go to Madonna. Thank you, Madonna, for being here. The question is about trust. As it's about, it keeps coming up again and again. So the question really is, how do you build trust between donors and funders? How would you advise that, with early stage entrepreneurs? How can we avoid early stage fundees being labeled as riskier than others? How can we build trust here?
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to just say that there have been some really amazing points of view that have been shared. And it's a tough one. I think one of the first things that we should maybe remember is that some of the, I guess, larger funders, and that doesn't apply to me where I am now, but some of the larger funders have people that they're accountable to. And I think Dido mentioned this. Sometimes it's the the whole risk aversion is kind of inherited. So in terms of like the funding they receive, there are lots of requirements, and then they kind of pass it down to social entrepreneurs or the NGOs that they're working with. And that can be a tricky kind of situation. At Women First, we tend to look to our partners, particularly as we're looking for new organizations to come into our model, into our program. So we have like a tiered system in terms of who bringing in new folks into the program. So first is our grantee partners in all the 5 countries. Do you have an amazing organization that you know that's doing good work in the community that falls under our focus area? So for us, as I said earlier, is improved livelihoods and financial independence. So under the economic justice kind of umbrella. So that's the first tier. Those are the people that we absolutely prioritize because our grantee partners are close to the ground. They know the issues, they know who's actually doing the work. And then second, we look to our sister fund. So Women First is a women's fund, and we are part of the International Network of Women's Funds. And it's an interesting group because they're the very large funders, and then they're very small grassroots organizations who are maybe community funders. And so we actually look to our sister funds for recommendations, particularly in the countries that we work with. And then finally, our wider network. Not to say that our wider network isn't as important, but we definitely prioritize folks who are closer to the ground. So that's kind of it in terms of looking to our partners. I would like to kind of switch the conversation a little bit and share an experience from someone who led a large kind of women's fund. One of the things she said was that she had been in conversations with this huge donor for 5 years. So sometimes it does take long, but sometimes you just have to make yourself indispensable. Like you are the go-to person. You are the expert. You are the connector. You know all these amazing community people, these amazing experts, you've become a resource to some of these funders. And it might not immediately be money. And Dido mentioned that money is a part of the equation. I know that it does seem interesting that we're speaking from the perspective of funders saying that money is not necessarily the most important thing. We recognize that it is important, but building community, building resources, building connections, those are incredible ways of kind of looking long-term, building the ecosystem that will enable funding to come to, I think, early stage social entrepreneurs and also nonprofit organizations. What else? There were a couple of things. So another, in terms of building connection, it's true that there is a responsibility on us as funders to create space. This, for example, is a wonderful opportunity for us to have these discussions because a lot of us tend to be in our little corner, and then social entrepreneurs are in their little corner. So it's good to be able to bridge this gap. And so, yes, it's good for funders to create these spaces. But again, it's good for you to create these spaces. Sometimes you're having like a small event, send a funder a message. This is this cool thing that we're doing. Please attend. This is an opportunity for us to learn. And there is a conversation around funding who you know, which it's true. We can't kind of, deny the fact that you tend to lean towards the familiar. So I think the opportunity here is to widen that scope of who they know. Invite funders to events, engage them in terms of discussions, send them information, maybe not 50 pages, like something really brief about the cool thing that you're doing, so that they know what is happening on the ground, what you're thinking, what you're doing, and you'll come to mind when there's funding available. So I think, I think that's kind of, there's a lot to say on this topic, and I feel like I keep jumping from different thing to different thing because I want to talk about it all. But yeah, basically just create a bridge. while the funder, it's also our responsibility to create a bridge, also kind of reach out, give them information, become a resource, become indispensable. And that's also a way of looking at being considered less risky, because if I know who you are, I know what you do and what your impact is in the community, there's no reason why I shouldn't fund you if we're aligned. Yeah, so thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Madonna. I hear that, trust here is a two-way street. We also have to create that, opportunity for trust to be built. And I love that you said, let's invite, funders into our own spaces and the things that we're doing. And we have 5 minutes left, and I'm just really I feel like we're scratching the surface now because of all the great responses. And, one of the questions or the concerns that was brought up when we were engaging entrepreneurs in our various meetings is, they said that there's like gatekeepers and, to funding. And they felt that, sometimes you've got to have funding to access more funding, which just doesn't make sense. And part of the reason why we were so driven to have this kind of conversation and have different people in the room is to break that, is to say you don't need to pay to have access to these great panelists who are here, and you have freely shared your sites and your emails, and we say thank you so much for that, because we've got lots of entrepreneurs in the room here who have really struggled to just be able to know who to reach out to know what their offerings are. And so we're really grateful that you are here. And I just really want to take that time to say thank you to each and every one of you for sharing about your organizations and what it is that you are doing. There is a question, I'm told, in the room. So I will take it to Tatiana, because I seem to lose it in a lot of chats going on. So please take it on, just because we've got 5 minutes before we can wrap this up.
Yeah, great. So there's just one question that's come up, and I'll just read it out directly. So given that there's a rise of schools for social entrepreneurs, youths who are well skilled and experienced in different domains, but they don't have college degrees, how do investors plan on providing funding opportunities to such individuals, noting that many funding opportunities require applications to have some level of a college degree? So I guess it fits into the kind of capacity building questions that have come up otherwise in the chat.
Right, anyone wants to speak into that? Anything on capacity building? Madonna, I know Women's Fast has given quite a bit of this. Would you like to speak into that?
Do you mind repeating the question? Please?
Sorry, happy to. I'm reading it out loud. It made more sense when I was reading it in my own head. So I think it's a question around, how do you, it's a question around how do you firstly fund opportunities for individuals to get access to different capacity building, specifically given that there is a kind of hierarchy in terms of college degrees or of kind of formal education being prioritized in some of the funding, access to funding.
Interesting. I think so. At Women First, our funding is flexible over 6 years. So we give you, it rises marginally over the 6 years. So you have 10,000 in the first year, you have 15,000 over 3 years, and then you have 20,000 over the last 2 years. But part of our model includes capacity building, and it's twofold. One is grantee partner determined. And so we don't necessarily want to come to you and say, this is what you need to know. You know better than us what your context is. And so we give funding for grantee determined capacity building needs. And as we're evolving our program, we're also developing a bit of a curriculum around capacity building, because as much as we respect and we honor the needs of our grantee partners, we also recognize that at the end of the 6 years, we want our grantee partners to be able to access funding from larger organizations that have more strict requirements. And so there are certain bits and pieces that we feel organizations need to at least have some knowledge about: financial management, monitoring, evaluation, and learning, because we deal mainly with nonprofit organizations. Communicating your impact. So I talked about this in the previous point. Talk about your work. Talk about it in a way that makes sense. So in terms of capacity building, we don't necessarily prioritize degrees, or, I think it's mainly what are your needs and what we kind of determine to be skills that are valued in terms of being able to access more funding at the end, or even in the course of the 6 years. I don't know if that answers the question, Vicky.
Yes, thank you. I think it does address the question. I want to say thank you because we've got 4 minutes to go. And I would love to, ask a bit more from everything that has been said here today, but I am very, very grateful. And on behalf of the rest of the team, I'm sure we've had a great time listening to each and every one of you. And as I said before, I think the same thing, I'm just going to repeat it again to say, thank you for honoring this. Thank you for, accepting to come and share about your work and not having a barrier to reach you, that you are willing for, lots of the young entrepreneurs here to get to know more about your work and how to reach you. And just breaking this barrier that people feel that they cannot reach funders. And we have changed that narrative. We've shifted that narrative that you are reachable, that you can be spoken to, and you're also willing to listen. Thank you for sharing your insights. So just to repeat for the sake of the audience, we were joined today by Evans Okinyi of East African Philanthropy Network. I believe he has shared his details in the chat. We have also been joined by Audrey Mate from Village Capital in Nairobi. We have been joined by Dido Baranashamaje of Seagull Family Foundation. And also we had Daisy Ford from Passport Group, and Hebe Foster of Mercy Corps, and finally Madonna Kedona from Women's Past International Fund. So thank you so much, everybody. I will turn it over to my co-host, Paulo, to just finish up the rest of the event. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This has been electric. It has been enlightening. And thank you to our panelists and young social entrepreneurs for giving us one of the most thought-provoking discussions on the day. Thank you so much. But obviously, the discussion does not end here. There's an African proverb, which is one of my favorites, which says that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. At the Impact Makers Advisory Board, our goal is to go far. And that is why we believe that funders play an active role in what we do at the Impact Makers Advisory Board. And we are asking you, as a panelist, to join our next board meeting to share insights as we shift funding models and ensure an economic system which works for all people and our planet as well. But I think we also continue to drive discussions and have a conversation around the types of resources and opportunities that we could continue to share to our young social entrepreneurs in order to enable them to network better, build better, scale faster, but also more sustainably. But to our young entrepreneurs, we want to stay in touch to learn more about the work that you are doing, and you to learn about the work that we are doing. We want you to be a part of our next event and many coming events as well. We want you to look out for resources and opportunities that are coming your way from some of the funders and panelists that you've listened to today. But we want you to share feedback to us. Tell us what you think. Ask questions. Tell us what you want us to do as the Impact Makers Advisory Board, because this platform is a safe space for you. It is designed for you. It is designed to help you. So thank you so much. We will continue to keep in touch. and it's been a blessing and a privilege to have you on the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You may leave at your own pleasure. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.